Despite everything you're hearing about, it was a massive red wave last election. It really wasn't. Trump won with a plurality of the vote, not a majority of the vote. He won with less than 50% of the American people saying that he should be president of the United States. He won by 1.5%, right? Won by a couple 100,000 votes in the swing states that ended up deciding the election. And the House is controlled by the Republicans by like a majority of like 2 to 3 seats. The Senate, 3 seats. And that is actually the 53 seat majority is like the biggest majority, the strongest result for the Republicans in the last election. So it is true that they won, and it is true that they hit the drumbeat, but it wasn't the red wave exactly that has been described on, say, maybe Fox and Friends. And that doesn't mean that they didn't win. That doesn't mean that voters didn't go out for some reasons. I think that there was definitely economic reasons. When Trump's going out there saying he's going to lower grocery prices, I think some people say I would like lower grocery prices. Now, whether or not it's going to be delivered is a totally separate question of whether that's going to be promised on the campaign trail. But people certainly not happy with the status quo. We were seeing incumbents and an anti-incumbents wave across the world, including in the United States. People seemingly wanted a faster recovery than the recovery that we were having. They wanted lower grocery store prices, and the anti-incumbency bias, the mess of the Democratic campaign, and Trump being able to dodge all of the legal challenges up until basically election day, delivered to the presidency, even if it wasn't necessarily with gigantic, crazy popularity ratings. But Biden's was bad enough that he couldn't even be the nominee anymore. The Democrats had to do something historically unprecedented. So now, because of the conditions that led to his nomination, somebody who is still historically unpopular for his first days in the White House is now president again. If you're interested in the numbers and where the historical comparisons lie, well, good for you, Gallup actually put it together. John F. Kennedy, at this point in his presidency, had a 72% approval rating. Dwight Eisenhower, 68. Barack Obama, 68. Jimmy Carter, 66. Richard Nixon, 59. Bill Clinton, 58. Joe Biden, 57. George Bush, 57. George H.W., 51. Ronald Reagan, 51. Donald Trump, second term, 42nd. Donald Trump, first term, 45. Notice something about this, though. In this Gallup poll, technically Trump has a negative approval rating. It says he has a 47 approval rate with a 48 disapproval rate. I mean, if that's within the margin of error, I presume 1%. I don't think Gallup's that good. But that suggests that he either has a net neutral or possibly even a negative approval rating right out of the gate.
Corrupt, bankrupt man.
Thank you so much for the support. I appreciate that, Buffoon. Thank you for... Oh, and a tier 3 sub as well. My goodness, you didn't need to do that. You're such a star. Anyway, as much as people talked about like a historic red wave, and he's so popular, oh my gosh, historically speaking, he just isn't. It's the first day of his office, and he has a, at best, net neutral approval rating. Now, that doesn't mean that a few months ago it wasn't better. It was. His approval rating was up in the 50s. It was actually going into the high 50s. But very quickly, we've seen his polling numbers start to slip a bit. And I have an interest in seeing whether it's going to stagnate, go up, or go down very quickly as he continues to grab the reins and thrash it about, whether it's on, unconstitutionally taking away the power of the purse from Congress, which, I mean, that's not something that exactly rolls off the tongue that well. That's not super marketable. Maybe that won't sell with the American public, but hey, let's put little Jimmy in some greens and throw him into Gaza to kick up some IEDs. I think that is something that maybe, definitely if you're elected on an American first mandate, might actually affect your approval rating in a much more negative manner. And a lot of these things are building up. The Department of Education, which we're hearing that they're cooking up a scheme to get rid of that, even though, again, that'd be unconstitutional, power of the purse. But they're going to try to do it the same way they did with USAID. Again, unconstitutional, power of the purse. But that's going to be extremely unpopular because the U.S. Department of Education is a largely popular institution. And I want to show you something here. And this isn't just true about a few of these things. This is true about a swath of Trump's policies now that people are starting to feel the effects of them. People are seeing their egg prices. People are starting to get emails at work if they're working in industries that are reliant on parts that are imported from Canada. For example, if you're a car manufacturer and you're relying on the imported parts that are manufactured over in our brotherly neighbors to the north, or if you're somebody that works in the agricultural industry, or you're somebody that works in anything that needs to bring in a decent amount of imports from Mexico, from Canada, from China, from the European Union, which we're starting to hear about a policy of sanctioning them as well. We're now starting to see, even though before, leading into the election, Trump's tariffs policies generally polled well because people just thought of it as, oh, tax foreign people, the foreign entity, the Chiners, okay, or the Mexicans, or the Japaners, okay, or all the foreigners, they're going to be the ones paying this, not us. Now that people are starting to not only like get those emails at work explaining like, oh, this is how it's possibly going to affect our employment, or this is how it's going to affect, you know, the bottom line, and now they're starting to figure out that actually the tax falls on you for importing because it's meant to discourage you from buying foreign imports and buying alternatives that are domestic. But when it's an across-the-board tariff and some things don't even have domestic alternatives, or there's no domestic market to provide an alternative, all you're doing is increasing the prices. And even if there is a domestic alternative, it's still going to increase prices because the only way they could get you to that domestic alternative is by making you pay increased prices. And if there's anything American consumers like, it's options and low prices. And you're starting to limit their options and you're starting to increase the price. So as the American voter learns more about this, they've started to change their tune a little bit. I want to show you this segment here where CNN's own Harry Etten actually reacts to the numbers on how the American public have changed their opinion on Trump's tariffs post-election. By the way, the amount of people are researching these tariffs is skyrocketing. One of the big Google searches post-Trump's election, like a few days afterwards, when people started to first get these emails from their bosses, it was, what's a tariff? Which is probably a problem if you voted for the man. But anyway, let's listen.
You know, I feel like Howard Stern's mother, something horrible has happened here. That's what's going on here, getting on my biggest New York Jewish accent I could. Trump's tariffs on Canada, China, Mexico. Look at this. Just 38% support. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to figure out that 51% opposed is larger than the 38% support.
Out of the gate, mind you. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt our handsome man Eaton here, but this is out of the gate. Before he wins, okay, yeah, we're kind of into it. Oh, wait, we're starting to learn more about it. Oh, never mind. Starting to get implemented right out of the gate, right when he starts to implement them. He hasn't even implemented them on Mexico yet. He delayed it.
I am a part-time meat and produce worker at a Cali Walmart. I saw eggs go from $4 to almost $11 a dozen in 2 months, and the deliveries are getting smaller. I've seen beef go up too, but hey, Trump is gonna fix it, right?
I don't know if you guys, oh my gosh. There's this old clip of JD Vance talking about egg prices that drives me absolutely wild. Here it is right here. Here is JD Vance. By the way, this Walmart person who just donated, thank you, by the way, for your service, the grocer, just donated $20 to the channel to talk about the egg price increase. Mind you, JD Vance on the campaign trail, we're talking $11 now. He was complaining, oh my God, Biden egg prices. It's $3 for a dozen eggs. It's almost $4. It's going up $4. It's now $11. I've seen some places, I swear to God, $14 for 12 eggs. Now, I already know that's culture shock for probably everybody. That's a crazy amount to pay for eggs. Okay, that's the type of price like the Russians, like per cost of living, like they're paying for eggs due to sanction stuff at certain periods. But for me, it's even crazier because I'm coming from Ukraine over this just steep change in prices. But I want to show you JD Vance talking about egg prices compared to where they are now. And now we're supposed to like pull our bootstraps up because we got to patriotically accept high egg prices because we got to stand up for Trump's tariffs. Listen to JD Vance. Listen to this. Listen to this sleazeball. I'm not a big fan of the man. Sorry. I'm not a big fan of your average venture capitalist.
Kamala Harris took office were short of $1.50 a dozen. Now a dozen eggs will cost you around $4 thanks to Kamala Harris's inflationary policies. We can do so much better. We certainly will.
Have you noticed egg prices across the region continue to go up? Experts aren't seeing any relief in sight.
Egg prices are estimated to increase about 20% more this year. That's compared to 2.2% for food prices in general. It's according to the Ag Department.
Soaring egg prices are also impacting local businesses.
Egg prices at nearly $8 a dozen. Can you imagine?
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen
This is
all
last month, by the way. It's gotten worse. This is in January.
Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise wages so that people can afford to buy the things that they need. If you look at our slate of executive orders, no, Margaret, prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
Okay, imagine, would he have accepted that answer from Joe Biden if he asked Joe Biden about $4 versus $11 egg prices? Anyway, back to the tariffs.
You don't have to be a mathematical genius to figure out that 51% oppose is larger than the 38% support. Look, Trump has done some fairly popular things in his first few weeks in office. This is not one of them. No, no, no. Horrible, 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 to quote Charles Barkley. The American folks are opposed to these tariffs. When you ask it specifically like this about the three countries, or if you ask it more vaguely about tariffs overall, they simply put, do not like it, Mr.
It's interesting. Even with China in the question, people say that they are opposed to tariffs. The majority here, and there's not a majority on a lot of things these days. How about how Americans say they want to see Donald Trump focused in this first 100 days and whether tariffs should be a focus?
You know, the two big focuses for Trump in the polling are immigration and the economy. Tariffs ain't it, my dear friend. Tariffs ain't it.
2%. 2%. Nobody cares. He made it the cornerstone of his economic message was tariffs, 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 tariffs. And nobody gives a fuck. Nobody cares about his obsession with tariffs from earlier American history. Nobody cares. Oh my God. Honestly, it's gotta be painful for him. It's gotta be painful. It's gotta hurt to a certain degree. Put this much effort into shilling the tonic water, you know, shilling this steak oil to only have it just shatter in your hand.
Trump should focus on tariffs. In November of 2024,
World WR3 tomorrow, and his hardline supporters would call it a brilliant move.
Are you suggesting that it would not be a brilliant move? Sounds like a libtard to me.
In November of 2024, when Ipsos asked it, it was 1%. Look at what happened in December of 2024. It doubled. It doubled, but to only 2%. When you double to only 2%, you know that the American people don't want Trump's focus to be here. They don't like it. They don't want his focus to be there. They want it to be on other issues.
Are they paying attention? Do they notice that this is happening?
Yeah, so the big question is, you know, Trump has done a lot of things that are unpopular in the past, but the poll numbers haven't moved.
Holy
that may be
crap,
the case here,
look at
but
that.
I'm a little skeptical of that. Why? Take a look at weekly Google searches for tariffs. Look how much higher they are versus a year ago. They're up 2,400%. That reaches a 21-year high. You know folks are paying attention when there are more Google searches for that than for Taylor Swift, who almost always is in the top of Google searches.
There were more Google searches for tariffs than Taylor Swift?
Correct. In the past week, more Google searches for tariffs than for Taylor Swift. I never thought I'd see it happen, but American people are actually interested in tariffs in a negative fashion, it seems to be.
Interesting. We'll see what happens over the next few hours. It
would have been nice if this was, say, on November 1st, maybe November 2nd, 3rd, or 4th. But after the 5th, it's just a little too late, isn't it? Kind of getting a little buyer's remorse. You're buying your phone, you take it out of the case, you're like, ah, shit, doesn't have a headphone jack. Oh, God, man, do I have to only use the Bluetooth ones? And, oh, God, what's this interface, man? I don't like the UI. Feeling a little buyer's remorse. Well, I think the buyer's remorse does not just stop at tariffs, at these policies towards Gaza, or these policies towards tearing up the U.S. Department of Education or the Constitution, or pursuing 2025 agenda policies, which they set on the campaign trail they were not going to do, and are immediately flipping back on, taking the architects of that plan and putting them into positions of power to lead the country forward. But also, the people that Trump is putting into positions of power, the very public people, the people that's out there on social media, in the media space, sucking up airtime as a representative of his government, the richest man on the planet, tied with a billionaire that likes to dip everything in gold, two paramount examples of wealth, lambasting and tearing up the government, institutions, checks and balances be damned. It seems that somewhere in the American psyche, they see the richest man on earth going up to the U.S. Department of Education and saying, I'm going to wring its goddamn neck and say, actually, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Because Elon Musk's involvement specifically in the Trump administration, and that's what's interesting about this CNN poll, is because a lot of polls will be like, what do you think of Elon Musk? And someone will be like, oh, I think the rockets are cool, because they just know him as like the science guy. But they're like, I don't like what he said about this, but the rockets are cool, so I guess positive. But if you ask people, what do they think about Elon Musk getting involved in government, about the fact that the richest man on the planet, this government contractor who's now getting access to financial documents that include information on his financial opponents, his financial competitors in those other government contractors, as well as the Social Security information of millions upon millions of Americans, as he's going to career employees who have put 30 to 40 years into service of the U.S. government as civil servants, and having them purged by 19-year-old high school graduates and like racists. And I mean, I'm not saying they're all like that, but I mean, those staffer who accused Treasury Department payment system, who access the Treasury Department payment system. You know, the payment system that has $6 trillion of value going through it, that if it like broke, the entire U.S. economy would probably just fucking collapse. Yeah, the guy who did that, who accessed that system for Doge, well, apparently he was on Twitter hating on Indians and bragging about being a mega racist. Let me read you some of this. Normalize Indian hate. The account associated with Eliz posted in September. You could not pay me to marry outside my ethnicity. Yeah, I don't like that. Not a fan. Not a fan. Anyway, moving back to that, these types of scandals and like the kind of blabbermouth that Elon has, I think it's starting to rub people the wrong way. And most people don't want him in the government anymore. Like, you know what? No, not a fan. We don't want the richest man on the planet running all of this.
How popular is the idea of having Elon Musk in this position, which has a great deal of power?
Yeah, I think simply put, the American people did not sign up for this. They voted in Donald Trump. They did not vote in Elon Musk, a key role for Musk in Trump's administration. You see this 39% support, 53%, the clear majority opposed. They don't want this. The American people don't want this. No, no, no. Just 36% of independents support the idea of Elon Musk having a key role in the Trump administration. So the bottom line, when it comes to all of this and Elon Musk being everywhere, it seems, in the federal government, trying to trim down the federal deficit, the American folks, simply put, do not want Elon Musk having a key role in the Trump administration.
Even though he has a very key role at this point. How has his own popularity sort of been impacted by this? Because if you go on Twitter or X, which he now owns, you would think he is the king of kings.
He may be the king of X or Twitter, but he ain't the king of the United States of America. And if he were the king, he'd be a very unpopular king.
Oh, my God.
Elon Musk's net favorable rating, you know, back in 2016 when he was known as the SpaceX guy, right? His net favorable rating was plus 29 points. By last year, pre-fall, he had dropped all the way down to -3 as he began to take on more of a political role. Remember, as he took on X, as he bought X, formerly known as Twitter. Now look in 2025. Whoa, the bottom has fallen out, minus 11 points. And it should be noted that Donald Trump's own net favor.
Within one decade, he swung over 40 points in popularity. And over 40 points, where he was almost plus 80, and now he's at, he was at 80% approval. Now he's at what? 39%? You get 39% of the country to be like, oh yeah, okay, he's fine. Oh my God. Just cleaved out so much of the world.
Favorable rating is closer to about a net zero. So Elon Musk at this particular point is far more unpopular than Donald Trump is, who is at the apex of his popularity. In fact, what we see with Elon Musk is he is at the trough of his popularity.
Look, I think a lot of people saw them as almost a package deal. You saw him more than J.D. Vance. We don't even say J.D. Vance's name. He is the vice president. It is Musk, Musk, Musk all day, every day because of the moves he's making. So does it seem like he's sort of becoming the face of this administration?
Yeah, I think in some ways he is. He is becoming the face of this administration. Look at Google searches for Elon Musk. They're at their all-time high since Google started tracking this back in 2004. Get this, it's up 700% from this time last year. It's like a rocket ship taking up. And you mentioned J.D. Vance. Get this, searches for Elon Musk are 7 times as high as the searches for J.D. Vance. So the idea that Elon Musk can go do this and kind of quietly go into the corner, he's becoming a face of this administration, an unpopular face at that.
And he certainly has not been quiet about any of it because he owns X and he can put everything out there, and we've seen it on a daily basis.
As someone who's quite loud, I recognize other people who are quite loud. He's quite loud.
You're loud?
I know. We're all barely shocked by
this.
Look, if Trump decides to go through with these tariffs, which are going to have downstream negative effects on American consumers who are already feeling the squeeze from higher egg prices, who are already learning more and more about tariffs and are moving against it and are not going to buy the same bullshit when they see it on the shelf. Look, people love to drink. People in America love a good shtick, like a good story, like a good selling. But once you take the lawn darts and once you've stopped singing your like selling song, lawn darts, tons of fun, and you actually like hit a few kids in their soft spot in the back of their head, you know, the fun starts to kind of fade away. And now the snake oil is just a bunch of crap. And now they don't like it anymore. And so then they're done with it and they move on to the next thing. And that's what the American people are now doing with tariffs economically. They weren't able to get anyone to care about him doing it in the first 100 days. He's not going to get a bunch of popularity from taking these moves from maybe from like some nationalist people, but all those people are already in his camp. All those people are already in his camp. So he is only going to lose people. And the longer it hurts the American consumer, the more it makes them bleed economically, the more he will bleed support. Now, he's already kicked the can down the road with Mexico when it comes to tariffs. He's kicked the can down the road with Canada when it comes to tariffs. He said that, hey, they put some border guards on the border. This is the same thing happened with Biden. The same thing happened with Biden. This is nothing. The Mexicans didn't concede the shit. He started a crisis and then shut down the crisis when you look down the barrel of the economic gun. Now, maybe he pulls the trigger in the future because he has this obsession with President McKinley, is this obsession with tariffs. He thinks it's the next new thing, and he's just really, really set on it, and he ends up going through with it. But the downstream economic negative effects of this will hurt his administration. People will see that effect on the shelf as a consumer. They'll see less products, or they'll see higher prices, one or the other, and it will affect them, and it will affect his support. Because the main reason he won was economic issues. And if he immediately makes the economy worse, is a terrible selling point. And then if people look up there and they see the people in power and it's the richest man in the world gutting the Department of Education, which is also unpopular,
has donated $5.
Look, if he keeps going after these departments and gutting these popular departments while taking unpopular tariff decisions, while telling American youth that like goodbye mom, I'm off to fucking the Levant, it's going to have a negative effect on his popularity. And if he keeps trotting around these unpopular schmucks like Musk, it's going to keep affecting his popularity. If he keeps on the track he's on right now, this maximum velocity, do as much bullshit as possible, I do think the sensory overload might slow down the negative reaction, but it's going to come. People are not going to be able to ignore or be able to divert their focus from increased prices on the dinner table or on the shelf of the stores that they have to go to on a daily basis. And the news agencies are not incompetent enough to not be able to put U.S. Department of Education shut down as a headline. And when you look at these federal agencies that the American public view favorably, the National Weather Service, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, the Federal Aviation Administration, the Food and Drug Administration, Transportation Security Administration, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, Federal Emergency Management Agency, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's ICE. If they end up going after the Department of Education or popular departments that they do want to gut, there's one path, and it's down in the polling. And if they want to win in 2 years, they got to be able to keep the American public on their side. If they want to solidify real power in the long run, they have to build stronger legislative majorities. Not everything can just be done to the chief executive unless the Supreme Court takes extreme radical action, which is not impossible, and that's a scary enough threat on its own. But this is not how you win in 2 years, and this is the downside of this maximum velocity, is that if you're doing all the immediate bad shit right away, and then they see an immediate change between how it was under Biden and then under your leadership, it's pretty easy to see who's at fault.